You didn't click on this video by chance. Something in you seeks a different kind of power, not the kind that shouts, not the kind that demands attention, but the kind that doesn't need to. Maybe you've sat in a room where someone spoke endlessly and no one listened. And maybe you've also watched someone else remain quiet. And yet, somehow, everyone turned toward them. Their stillness said more than noise ever could. Their calmness wasn't weakness, it was presence. You feel that pull now, don't you? You're tired of over-explaining. You're tired of letting your energy be scattered by noise, by pressure, by the constant impulse to react. You're ready for something else. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The mind that is still is a fortress." That's not just poetic, it's tactical. Because in a world addicted to constant reaction, the one who resists that urge controls the rhythm. And in many cases, that rhythm controls the room. This video is your guide to becoming that presence, not by faking confidence, not by overpowering others, but by embodying a calm that bends conversations without raising your voice. We'll explore how the Stoics mastered this quiet influence and how you can too. And as we move through each strategy, you'll find something deeper than charisma. You'll find control through stillness. If you're someone who values clarity over chaos and power without ego, consider subscribing. This channel is for those who'd rather listen with purpose than speak without direction. Now, let's begin. Number 1, the empty cup commands attention. There's a kind of power that doesn't announce itself. It doesn't walk into a room demanding the spotlight. It doesn't try to be the loudest, the funniest, or the most opinionated. And yet it's the presence everyone remembers. You've seen it before. Someone sits quietly, eyes calm, shoulders relaxed. They aren't trying to prove anything, but their stillness draws people in. Because while others rush to fill silence with noise, this person leaves room to breathe. That's the paradox of presence. The more empty space you create, the more others fill it with attention. Epictetus reminds us we have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so that we may listen twice as much as we speak. But the lesson goes deeper than just listening. It's about receptivity, composure. The empty cup doesn't just hold more, it invites others to pour into it. You begin to realize this the more you observe. In meetings, in conversations, in debates, the one who pauses before speaking often speaks the most wisely. The one who allows silence to stretch often becomes the axis around which the room revolves. But here's where it gets personal. Why does this matter to you? Because if you're constantly reacting, constantly inserting yourself to be seen, you're training others to tune you out. You become background noise. But when you choose to stay still, when you wait, you flip the script. Your quiet becomes rare. And in a noisy world, rare things are valuable. Let's make it practical. How do you begin embodying this empty cup energy? Start with one simple practice. Pause before replying, before interrupting, before expressing what you have to say. Pause for 2 seconds. Feel your breath. Feel the impulse to fill the space and let it pass. It's harder than it sounds, isn't it? But with time, those 2 seconds change everything. You start noticing what others really mean, not just what they say. You start seeing the undercurrents of emotion in the room. Tension, insecurity, doubt, and you no longer get swept up in it. This is where power begins. Because once you stop needing to win the moment, you start guiding it. When someone finishes talking, wait a heartbeat. Don't rush to reply. Let your silence signal thoughtfulness. And in that pause, you'll often see something shift. The other person might clarify themselves, or even contradict themselves. They reveal more while you remain centered. You're not playing chess anymore. You are the board. And there's something else too, a subtle skill most overlook, listening as a form of control. When you genuinely listen, not just wait for your turn to speak, you disarm egos. You offer dignity, and that earns trust. Confucius said, "Silence is a true friend who never betrays," and your silence, when used with intention, becomes your strongest ally in any room. But silence without presence is just absence. So here's the secret. Don't just be quiet, be alert. Like a cat sitting still before it leaps. Like a monk who hears every crackle of the fire. Stillness doesn't mean passivity. It means awareness without rush. It means calm without collapse. Think of a full moon above a lake. The lake doesn't ripple to show its beauty. It remains still and lets the moonlight be seen through it. When you quiet your surface, others project clarity into your stillness. They feel heard, seen, grounded, and suddenly you're not just part of the conversation, you're leading it without saying much at all. Now ask yourself, when was the last time you allowed your silence to carry the weight of your presence? Not because you didn't have something to say, but because what you didn't say meant even more. That's the power of the empty cup. It doesn't shout to be filled, it simply waits, and that quiet waiting changes the room. Number 2, anchor yourself to the present moment. There's a certain heaviness in a room when people aren't really there. They're speaking, nodding, reacting, but their minds are somewhere else. You've felt it in meetings and conversations, even in your own thoughts, that drifting, that quiet disconnection where your body stays but your attention floats. And here's the danger. If you're not fully present, you lose control of the moment. You become reactive, unstable, and others can feel that. Because presence is a language, and people sense when you've left the room, even if your eyes are still looking at them. That's why anchoring yourself in the now isn't a spiritual cliche, it's a Stoic advantage. Seneca wrote, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality. When your mind is in the future, you become anxious. When your mind is in the past, you become distracted. Only in the present are you powerful." Stillness doesn't begin with silence. Stillness begins with attention, undivided, unhurried, and fully yours. Think of a ship in a storm. No matter how strong the vessel, without an anchor, it drifts. But even in the wildest winds, an anchored ship holds its position. It stays exactly where it needs to be. That's the kind of grounded presence we're building. So, how do you do it? How do you anchor yourself to the present, especially when emotions, distractions, and noise try to pull you away? It starts with the breath. Not the kind of breath you take automatically, but the kind you feel. Right now, inhale slowly, and exhale even slower. Notice how your chest rises. Notice how your thoughts pause. This is your anchor. No one can take it from you, and the more often you return to it, especially when pressure rises, the more you become the calm in the chaos. Another practice, soft focus. Instead of locking your eyes on every movement, or darting around the room anxiously, choose a point, a place to let your gaze rest lightly, a face, a corner of the table. Let your vision be steady. Let it slow you down. When your eyes become still, your mind soon follows. And now comes the shift. Once you are still, others sense it. They may not know why, but they feel safer. They trust your words more. They pause when you speak. Because your energy tells them this person isn't frantic, this person isn't reacting, this person is rooted. You've become the eye in the storm. Now, apply this in the real world. You're in a meeting, someone challenges your idea. You feel the heat rise, the heartbeat pick up, that pull to defend or rush a comeback. Pause. Inhale slowly, don't speak yet. Let that single breath anchor you in the now. Feel your feet against the floor. Feel the weight of your body in the chair. Feel the moment as it actually is, not what your mind's inflating it into. Then respond if needed, calmly, clearly. Not because you're suppressing emotion, but because you've chosen not to be swept away by it. That is power. And it doesn't require volume. It doesn't require dominance. It just requires presence. Buddha taught, do not dwell in the past. Do not dream of the future. Concentrate the mind on the present moment. And when you do, you bring your entire being into alignment. Mind, body, intention. That kind of integrity is rare, and rare is remembered. So here's the metaphor. Be like a mountain, not because you never feel the wind, but because the wind doesn't move your roots. The room will shift, the people will chatter, the stakes may rise, but you stay where your feet are. You return to breath. You hold your gaze. You say only what's needed, and in doing so, you quiet the room without asking it to be quiet. So let me ask you, what part of your mind wanders most often? And what would change if today you simply brought it back to this moment? Again and again. This is your anchor. Return to it as many times as it takes, because calm isn't a talent. It's a choice made repeatedly. And in the choosing, you become still. You become trusted. You become powerful. Number 3, master the smallest gesture. Control isn't always loud. In fact, real control rarely is. Sometimes the most powerful thing in the room isn't what's said, it's what's shown. Subtly, quietly, barely noticeable, but unmistakably felt. Think about this. Have you ever noticed how some people seem to carry authority even before they open their mouth? They walk in, and there's something about them, not flashy, not aggressive, but composed, centered, controlled. It's not charisma in the traditional sense. It's something smaller, quieter, more refined. It's the art of micro gestures, the tiny intentional movements that speak louder than words. Socrates said, let him that would move the world first move himself. It begins with the body, because your posture is a message. Your hands do speak. Your eyes, even in stillness, tell stories. This is why Stoics believe so deeply in self-discipline. It's not just about moral virtue, it's about physical presence. Because when you control your gestures, you control the signal you send to the world. Let's break it down. You're standing in a group. Tension is rising. People are talking over each other. Disagreements are getting sharp. You don't join the frenzy. You slow down. Your shoulders drop an inch. Your eyes soften. Your hands remain open, maybe resting gently on the table. You don't fidget, you don't clench, you don't retreat inward, you stay grounded. And in that moment, you become the stabilizing force. The signal that says, we are okay, I am okay. This conversation isn't running me, I'm here steady. And people notice that, not always consciously, but they feel it. It's like a single candle in a dark hallway, small, still, unwavering, yet everything else orients around it. Here's how to develop this kind of silent signal. 1. Posture as philosophy stand, or sit upright, not rigid but intentional. Let your spine align. Let your chin rest slightly downward, not as a sign of submission, but awareness. This tells others, I'm present. I'm not bracing. I'm not bluffing. I'm just here. 2. Master your hands. Your hands are always speaking. Do they clench in stress? Do they fidget with objects to escape discomfort? Try this. Let them rest gently. Palms visible, not tucked away, not forced, just open, because openness calms others. And when others feel calm, you gain quiet influence. 3. Eyes that observe, not dominate. Don't dart, don't glare, don't stare to intimidate. Instead, notice. Be there. Hold eye contact gently, especially when listening. Let your gaze be steady but soft. That kind of attention tells the other person you're safe. I see you. I'm not trying to win. I'm just here. And here's where it turns powerful. These micro signals build trust, and trust is what moves the room. It doesn't matter if you're speaking to 5 people or 50. If your body language says, I'm grounded, others will feel it and begin to mirror it. Why? Because energy is contagious. And calm energy is the rarest kind in today's reactive world. Think of a forest. Even the wind pauses before moving through old trees. When you carry yourself with the slow strength of a tree, you don't need to say much. Your presence speaks before your mouth does. And the best part, you don't need to be perfect. You just need to be aware. Awareness turns habits into tools. Every time you catch yourself tapping a foot, wringing your hands, darting your eyes, you now have a choice. You can reset, drop back into your body, feel your breath, let stillness return. Because power doesn't live in performance, it lives in presence. So let me ask you, what's one gesture you often make under pressure? And what would shift if you trained that movement to become calm instead of chaotic? Just imagine a version of you who doesn't fidget, doesn't flinch, but simply sits in the heat of the moment like a mountain in wind. That version is closer than you think. It's not about acting different. It's about being more aware of what your body already says and then teaching it a different language. A still one, a strong one, a silent one that speaks volumes without a single word. Number 4, cultivate inner observatory vision. Before you can control the room, you must first learn to observe it. But not just observe others, observe yourself. Because how can you influence anything if you don't know the state you're in? We often think power comes from reading people body language, tone, eye contact. And yes, those things matter. But Stoicism teaches something deeper. True clarity begins with inner awareness. You can't master the room if you haven't mastered the weather inside your own mind. Heracles, a Stoic philosopher, described life as concentric circles. At the center is the self. Only when you understand that center can you expand outward to family, to community, to the world. That's not just theory. That's a system for control. You become the calmest person in the room when you know what's going on inside your own mind before it leaks out. Imagine you're in a discussion. You feel the urge to prove your point. Maybe someone dismisses your idea and suddenly your chest tightens. Your jaw stiffens. Your breath becomes shallow. What happens next? You either react or observe. That's the turning point, because if you're reacting, you're not in control. But if you're observing, you can pause. You can choose, you can lead. Think of it like being the keeper of a lighthouse. Your mind is the lens. If it's cloudy or smudged, the light becomes distorted. But if you clean the lens regularly, if you understand when fog rolls in, you can still shine clearly even in chaos. This is the work of the inner observer, and here's how you cultivate it. Start with micro check-ins. Set a quiet reminder once every few hours. Ask yourself, what am I feeling right now? What thought just passed through me? Where is my breath sitting in my chest or my belly? Not to judge, not to fix, just to see. Because seeing is power, and most people live their lives without ever seeing themselves. 2. Track emotional patterns. Notice your triggers. Is it being interrupted? Is it silence in a conversation? Is it disagreement or disapproval? Write these down. Keep a list, not to shame yourself, but to spot patterns. Because once you see the pattern, you're no longer inside it. You're outside. You're observing. And that's where control begins. 3. Return to the body. Your mind lies, but your body doesn't. A clenched jaw, a tapping foot, a shallow breath. These are signals. They don't scream, they whisper. But if you learn to hear them, you can interrupt reactivity before it explodes. When you feel the shift, pause. Touch your thumb to your index finger. Roll your shoulders back. Take one deep breath into the belly. This resets your nervous system. And when your nervous system is calm, your leadership becomes instinctual. Lao Tzu said, "He who knows others is wise. He who knows himself is enlightened." That's not a metaphor, that's a blueprint. Because the more aware you become of your own signals, the more clearly you see them in others. Someone fidgets, Someone avoids eye contact. Someone talks too much, too fast. You don't judge them, you read them. You understand what's not being said. And because you're still, they feel safe in your silence. You become the observer, and observers are always in control. It's like watching a chess match from above the board. While others are caught in the game, you can see the whole pattern. You don't react to every move, you respond to the whole flow. Let me ask you, when was the last time you paused not just to breathe, but to see what your mind was doing, not to criticize, not to correct, just to witness? Most people go their whole lives living inside unobserved thoughts. That's why they're easily provoked. That's why they lose presence in rooms that demand it. But you're different now. From this point on, you'll notice your heartbeat before your voice rises. You'll feel your jaw before your words tighten. You'll see yourself, and because of that, you'll stay in control. That's what it means to be unshakable. Not because nothing moves you, but because you notice when something does, and you return to your center anyway. That's what others sense. Not that you're flawless, but that you're aware. And awareness is rare, and rare is respected. So the next time you enter a room, don't just look around, look inward. Because when you lead from the inside out, you carry a presence that no one else can imitate. Number 5, speak only in essential parcels. In a world obsessed with saying more, the Stoic learns to say less. Not out of fear, but out of precision. Because when you speak with intention, people listen with intention. Zeno of Citium, the founder of Stoicism, was known for valuing brevity. He once said that speech should be like gold, refined, rare, and of value, not scattered like dust. The power of your words isn't just in what you say, but in how little you say when everyone else is saying too much. You've seen it. People who ramble, who fill every pause with noise, who confuse more words with more wisdom. But you've also seen the opposite. Someone speaks a single sentence and the room falls silent afterward. That's not charisma, that's clarity. And clarity comes from constraint. Imagine your words as precious stones. If you give too many away, they lose their value. But if you offer just one at the right time, with the right intention, people stop to admire it. This is the practice of speaking in essential parcels. And here's why it matters. When you speak less, you create space. And in that space, your presence grows. Your voice becomes a signal, not part of the noise. So how do you develop this kind of verbal discipline? 1. Embrace the pause. Before you speak, pause for a breath. It doesn't need to be long, just enough to choose your words, rather than spill them. The pause itself commands attention. It signals that what's coming next has been considered. It gives others space to lean in, to prepare for meaning, instead of just waiting for noise. 2. Speak in one thought at a time. Rather than stacking ideas, so simplify. Make one point, one example, one closing line, then stop. Let the idea breathe. Let your silence wrap around it like a frame around a painting. That restraint shows confidence. It says, I don't need to convince you with volume. I trust the strength of the idea. 3. Cut the filler. Notice your habitual phrases, kind of, like, I guess, just. They creep in when we doubt our clarity, but when you remove the filler, your words become lean and powerful. You don't sound robotic, you sound composed, clean, certain. This doesn't mean becoming cold or distant. You can still be warm, still human. But your words are no longer wandering. They are grounded. Seneca said, speech that's compressed has more force, and force doesn't have to be loud. Sometimes it's a whisper that stops the room. Think of a samurai drawing his sword. He doesn't swing wildly, he waits. One precise motion, swift, clean, final. Your words should feel like that, not aggressive, but unmistakable. This is especially powerful in emotionally charged situations. When someone attacks or interrupts you, instead of defending with a flood of words, You offer a calm, concise response, not out of submission, but out of strength, because the person who can stay precise under pressure controls the pressure. Let me give you an example. Imagine someone accuses you of being passive. Instead of explaining yourself endlessly, you pause and say simply, "I prefer to respond when it matters." That's it. No defense, no escalation, just one clear, grounded reply. And that reply shifts the energy. Here's the metaphor. A perfectly cut diamond doesn't need to be big to be valuable. It's the clarity that gives it worth. Now ask yourself how much of what you say is essential, and how much is habit reaction or nervous noise. The next time you speak, treat each sentence as currency. Spend it wisely, because when you speak only what's necessary, you become a person of verbal integrity. And that's rare. And again, rare is remembered. In your stillness, your posture says, "I'm present." In your gaze, your silence says, "I'm listening." And in your speech, your precision says, "I'm not here to impress. I'm here to express with clarity and care." So hold your words like tools, not toys. Shape them with thought, deliver them with calm, and let others feel their weight because you didn't waste them. That's how the Stoic speaks. Not often, but always. With purpose. Number 6, harness the energy of collective breath. There's an invisible rhythm in every room. It's not just in the words people speak, it's in the air between those words. It's the tension before someone interrupts, the shallow breathing before an argument, the energy spike when someone panics, and everyone else follows. What's often overlooked is that breath controls rhythm, and rhythm controls emotion. Cleanthes, the Stoic poet-philosopher, once said, "The wise man moves in harmony with the whole, not dominating the group, not withdrawing from it, but tuning into it like a flute that carries the melody of the room without overpowering the song." You can do this too, not with loud gestures, not with long speeches, but with something much more subtle and far more powerful: your breath. Let's break this down. Every group, every gathering has a collective nervous system. People mirror each other unconsciously. One anxious person starts to fidget, and suddenly everyone becomes tense. Someone starts rushing their speech, and the whole room speeds up. But the same works in reverse. When you slow your breath, you shift the rhythm of the space around you. It's biological, it's ancient, and it's weaponized presence. You become the emotional anchor, not because you're trying to control anyone, but because you've taken full control of yourself. So how do you do it? 1. Use the exhale as your power move. The inhale is alertness, but the exhale is where calm lives. Long, slow exhales send a signal to your body and to those watching you that you're safe, unthreatened, and in control. And when others pick up on that rhythm, they begin to mirror it too. In a conversation, when things get tense, let yourself exhale slightly longer. Not dramatically, just enough for your body to soften. That one shift can soften the entire mood of the room. 2. Become the barometer. Before you speak, scan the emotional weather of the room. Is it anxious, loud, nervous, disconnected? Rather than matching it, counterbalance it. If they're loud, speak slower. If they're scattered, move deliberately. If they're tense, breathe visibly, letting your shoulders rise and fall with steady control. Your presence becomes the tuning fork. The group unconsciously calibrates to you, not because you demanded it, but because you embodied it. This is leadership without dominance. This is influence without volume. 3. Let breath create space in conversation. You don't need to rush your replies. Use breath as punctuation. Someone asks you a difficult question. Instead of answering immediately, breathe in. Hold a beat, then exhale and speak. It tells others, I'm not rushed. I'm thinking. It tells yourself, I'm grounded. I'm here. even when others try to interrupt your breath, reminds you that urgency is optional. That's what the Stoics practiced. Not empty calm, but deliberate internal rhythm so they could lead not just with words, but with energy. Now here's something important. Don't confuse this for manipulation. What we're doing isn't about pretending to be calm, it's about actually becoming calm so that calmness naturally radiates outward. It's the difference between acting composed and being composed. And here's your metaphor. Picture a metronome in a chaotic orchestra. When the strings rush, when the drums get too loud, the conductor doesn't shout. He just taps the tempo again. Steady, reliable, certain, and eventually the instruments follow. That's you. The breath is your baton. Each inhale and exhale a reminder. Stay in time, hold your pace, lead the rhythm, and others, consciously or not, will begin to match you. Because people don't crave more noise, they crave someone who feels safe to follow. That's what steady breath communicates. I'm not overwhelmed, I'm not reactive, I'm here, and I'm listening. Let me ask you, what would shift in your life if every room you entered, you tuned the energy instead of absorbing it? What if through breath alone you could change the rhythm of the moment, not by force, not by control, but by presence? This is the quiet power of Stoic breathwork. No one sees it, no one applauds it, but everyone feels it. So the next time a room feels tense, don't rush, don't shrink, just breathe. Let them catch your rhythm, not the other way around. Number 7, choose when to break silence with story. There's a moment when silence has done its job, when the calm you've held has softened the room, when presence has turned attention your way. Now, it's time to speak, not with force, not with complexity, but with story. Because when words finally leave your mouth after long silence, they must carry weight. And few things carry more weight than a story well-timed and deeply lived. Musonius Rufus, a Roman Stoic teacher, didn't lecture his students with endless theory. He used examples, small grounded stories from daily life, stories that didn't preach, but revealed. Why? Because people don't remember points, they remember pictures. And when those pictures come from you, from a moment you lived, from a truth you felt, from a lesson you earned, that story becomes a mirror, not just for you, but for everyone listening. But here's what separates Stoic storytelling from performance. It's never about spotlight. It's about service. You're not telling a story to impress. You're sharing it to illuminate. Here's why this matters. If you stay quiet all the time, people may forget your presence. But if you speak only when it matters, and when you do, you tell a story that matters, you become unforgettable. Think about someone you respect, someone who rarely speaks, but when they do, everyone listens. They likely don't drop facts. They drop moments. They tell you how something happened, what it taught them, how it stayed with them. And that's what makes it powerful. It's human, it's relatable, and it doesn't feel like a lecture. So how do you use this in your own life? 1. Build a story library. You don't need to tell stories on the spot. You prepare them, you live them, you collect them. Think back. When did you face a challenge and stay composed? When did you fail? Then realize the failure was necessary. When did stillness save you from saying something you'd regret? Write those stories down. 3 to 5 sentences is enough. Boil them down to the essential moment, the emotion and the insight. You don't need drama, you need truth, and truth resonates. 2. Wait for the right opening. The power of story is timing. You don't lead with it, you release it. When someone is ranting, complaining, or seeking attention, stay quiet. Let the energy rise, run, burn itself out. Then, when the room needs grounding, you speak with calm breath, gentle tone, and begin. That reminds me of a moment I had, or I used to react the same way until this happened. And suddenly the dynamic shifts. People stop posturing, they lean in. Because you didn't fight for their attention, you earned it. 3. Let the lesson speak for itself. You don't need to wrap your story with a moral. Let it hang in the air like morning fog. Let others feel the meaning, don't hammer it in. The most powerful stories don't say, "Here's the lesson." They say, "Here's what happened." Take from it what you will, and because you don't force insight, people absorb more. Think of thunder. It doesn't explain itself. It follows silence, and it shakes people without warning. That's what your story does when delivered with restraint. Now let me ask you, what's one moment in your life that taught you more than words ever could? And if you had to share that in one breath, not to gain approval, but to awaken understanding in another, how would you tell it? That's the story worth saving. That's the story worth saying. In a Stoic life, speech is rare, but story is sacred. It bridges the space between silence and action, between knowing and teaching. So don't be afraid to speak when silence has laid the ground for your words. Just remember, say little. But when you do say something, only you could say something you have lived, something real. And then return to stillness, because when your story is done and you say nothing more, that silence becomes amplified. It echoes, it expands, it invites reflection. That's what separates a story from noise. That's what makes your voice linger long after the words have ended. Number 8, turn critique into centered gravity. You can't control every room if you can't control what happens when someone challenges you. Critique will come. Judgment will arrive. Someone will misunderstand you, question your silence, or mistake your calm for weakness. Let them. Because this is the final test of your presence. Can you stay centered, even when pulled? Marcus Aurelius reminds us, if you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. It's not the comment that stings. It's what you believe about it. It's how you respond to it. When you're criticized, what do you do? Do you rush to defend yourself? Do you shrink? Do you fight to prove you're right? The Stoic does none of these, not because they're passive, but because they've trained themselves to be the mountain, not the leaf. And this is what critique can become, a test of gravity. Do you scatter, or do you pull inward into your core, into your stillness, into your power? Let's make this real. You're in a room. Someone questions your silence. Why don't you speak up more, or worse? They mock it. They interpret it as arrogance or ignorance. You could defend yourself. You could lash back. You could retreat. But what if you did none of those things? What if you stayed rooted, took one breath, and said simply, "I speak when I feel it's necessary"? And then you let that sit. No flinching, no apology, no explanation. Because your value doesn't come from being understood, it comes from being centered. You don't need the room to agree with you. You need to remain you in the presence of disagreement. That's what critique tests. Not your arguments, but your alignment. Here's how to cultivate that kind of gravity. 1. Reframe criticism as data, not drama. The moment you receive critique, don't personalize it. Observe it. Ask, is there truth here? Is this about me or about them? What can I take from this without losing myself? Turn the heat of emotion into the light of awareness. Most criticism says more about the speaker than the subject. So listen not to react, but to understand. And sometimes to simply let it pass, because not every opinion requires a reply. 2. Respond, don't react. The Stoics' pause becomes sacred in these moments. When insulted, pause. When misunderstood, pause. When attacked, pause. This gap is your power. It separates instinct from intention. And from this gap, you choose what serves, not what spikes. You may respond with words, or you may not respond at all. Both are acts of power when chosen, not forced. 3. Let critique ground. you, not shake you. Instead of resisting criticism, absorb what's useful. Let it deepen your presence, not fracture it. When someone hurls judgment, imagine it as a stone tossed at a mountain. It hits, maybe chips the surface, but the mountain doesn't move. That's you. Not because you're numb, but because you've prepared yourself. Because you've practiced stillness long before the challenge came. And here's the metaphor. A tree with deep roots doesn't panic in the wind. It sways, but it does not snap. So let me ask you, how do you currently respond to judgment? And who would you be if critique no longer rattled you, but returned you to yourself, not cold, not passive, just clear, because the room doesn't follow the loudest voice. It follows the one who remains whole. When others fracture, when you receive critique with grace, when you sit in discomfort, without fidgeting, when you answer calmly or not at all, you reshape the power dynamic without ever touching it. People expect defensiveness. When you don't give it, they recalibrate. They pause. They begin to question their own tone. And in that pause, you reclaim the rhythm. That's what it means to turn critique into centered gravity. Not resisting every comment, but absorbing the moment without losing your stillness. Because you are not here to be right all the time. You're here to be anchored all the time. And from that anchor, your power speaks for itself. You've made it here for a reason. Not because you wanted to be louder, but because you're ready to be stronger. Not strength through dominance, not through flashy confidence, but through presence, through restraint, through stillness. Because the most powerful person in the room isn't always the one speaking. Often it's the one who chooses when not to. Think back on everything we've walked through, the breath, the pause, the story, the posture, the quiet reply. Each one a thread, woven into a presence that doesn't force attention but attracts it. Marcus Aurelius didn't rule with volume. He ruled with composure. He wrote, reflected, walked slowly through chaos, and let his stillness stretch further than any command. That's what you're building now, a calm so rooted that people lean into it without realizing why. A presence that moves the room without needing to move at all. But here's the truth. If you don't live this, you'll get swept back into noise, into over-explaining, into reaction, into trying to prove what's already clear. Don't let that happen. Choose quiet strength, practice it, return to it. Let your silence become substance. Let your restraint become rhythm. Let your stillness become influence. If this way of being speaks to you, subscribe. Not to follow noise, but to keep returning to center. Because still waters may look calm, but their reach is endless. And so is yours.